Olá, tudo bem? Bem-vindo ao meu programa semanal aqui no Brasil 247, que entra no ar todo domingo durante o jogo, 4 horas da tarde. Esta semana eu vou começar mostrando uma entrevista para vocês, produzida pelo The Real News, emissora sem fins lucrativos, sediada em Baltimore, sobre a possibilidade que o impeachment do Donald Trump, que já está em andamento, vai causar uma guerra civil nos Estados Unidos. Pelo jornalista entrevistado pelo Mark Steiner, o JIT, que é um jornalista do The Nation, um dos revistas de notícias mais antigas dos Estados Unidos, fundado do século XIX, ele argua que a guerra civil já está acontecendo, que a sociedade norte-americana é tão polarizada e que tem tanta violência encorajado pelo governo Trump contra imigrantes, contra judeus, contra afro-americanos, que você pode categorizar o que está acontecendo na sociedade estadunidense agora como uma guerra civil híbrida. As guerras modernas são diferentes do que as guerras do século XX. Eles envolvem muito mais mídia social, encorajamento de manifestações, polarização, líderes comunicando com seus seguidores através das mídias sociais, como o JIT mostra aconteceu na Síria. Ou seja, ele está dizendo que já está acontecendo. Agora, o medo de muitas pessoas é que se Trump cai, o pequeno base fanático dele, todo armado, vai espalhar mais confusão nos Estados Unidos, mais racismo, mais fascismo, e um risco. Porém, apesar do fato que o impeachment está avançando, e provavelmente vai acontecer no Congresso, isso não significa que Trump cai. Pois depois do impeachment, para ele ser retirado do poder, ele precisa ser apurado no Senado. E no Senado, diferente do que o Congresso, precisa 2/3 do voto para tirar um presidente. É um pouco diferente do que o caso em outros países. E como o Partido Republicano controla o Senado, a chance disso acontecer é pouco. Ou seja, a manobra de impeachment pode enfraquecer Trump, pode danificar a imagem dele, mas é uma manobra política relacionada com as eleições que vem ano que vem. Provavelmente não vai resultar no Trump saindo da presidência, mas pode causar ele perder as eleições. E a sua esperança para todo mundo que está querendo para Trump cair, porque esse vai afetar o Brasil também. Como o Bolsonaro está apostando todo no governo Trump, se Trump cai, ele vai sofrer também. Pode cair também, espero que sim. O segundo reportagem é feito pelo meu amigo, correspondente do The Real News aqui no Brasil, Mike Fox, sobre a greve estudantil na Universidade Federal de Santa Catarina e como isso relaciona a luta nacional contra as reformas ultraneoliberais do governo entreguista do Jair Bolsonaro. Espero que vocês gostem dessas duas reportagens. Uma boa tarde para todos e todas de vocês e obrigado por assistir meu programa.
Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Mark Steiner. Great to have you all with us once again. The impeachment, yes, it's going on, and that process is rolling along. There are still so many questions to be answered. There are many who think the impeachment process itself will backfire, rev up Trump's minions to victory in 2020, and that there really isn't a there in terms of what the impeachment has to prove. Reminding ourselves what the Constitution said. Let's listen to this again. The Constitution says what? The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and in conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. So people are asking, is this, the impeachment, the right political strategy? Some would argue that Trump doesn't need to tell the truth. He just needs to muddy the waters. And that's enough, all he has to do. Who's up in charge of this? Is it the security apparatus or are progressives calling the shots? Who's calling the shots for this impeachment? How deeply important is that? And it's a war within Congress itself going on. Secretary of State Pompeo now refusing to allow people from the State Department to testify. So where will this take us? Well, our guest often here is Jeet Heer, who's national correspondent of The Nation, joins us once again. And Jeet, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Good to be here.
So this is really, there's so much here. But let me talk about, first of all, what this means politically in a larger sense from your perspective. There's some tweets that Trump has put out recently about the dangers of bringing us to a civil war and more. And let's read a couple of these tweets that he's had. So if the Democrats are successful in removing the president from office, which they never will be, he says, in paren, it will cause a civil war-like fracture in this nation from which our country will never heal. And he's quoting Pastor Robert Jeffries in that, and he likes that, I'm sure. And then there's this other tweet he mentioned as well. Let's look at these two and talk about what they might mean. So I love this one. So he has this map, and he's got all the places in red that they have the electoral power. Try to impeach this. I won't say what he's probably thinking in his head, but it is what he's going to try to do. He is going to try to muddy the waters, right?
Yes. I mean, I think this is, well, first of all, it's the Civil War tweet is almost like a threat. It's like, well, this is a nice little republic you got here. It'd be a shame if anything happened to it.
Right.
But I mean, the thing to realize is that this Civil War talk did not originate from Trump. It's a longstanding feature of the far right. I think Steve King, the very reactionary white nationalist congressman in Iowa, said, tweeted once, if there's a civil war coming, we have more bullets. We have like 1 trillion bullets. And I think that it really, the underlying issue here is that there's sort of Trump's base knows that they're a minority. Trump did not win even a plurality of the popular vote. He got less than his opponent. But they feel that this is still their country. They're the real Americans. And the people who don't agree with them are not real Americans. And they're willing to, do the Samson option. If they're deprived of power, they're just going to bring the whole house down. And the other aspect is, it's not so much a civil war is coming. There's a civil war that's already here. Because it's not like we're not living in the 19th century. You're not going to see massed armies gathering together. The modern civil war that one would see in the former Yugoslavia or Syria is, through terrorism and through militia groups and through this kind of social media terrorism where leaders incite their followers, put out hateful messages, and then people go out. And if you really think about it, that's already happening. There's been people who have been moved by the sort of fear of immigrants and the idea that Jews are somehow responsible for the ills. And they've shot up synagogues and killed people. And they've shot up in El Paso a Walmart filled with immigrants. The Civil War is here.
The Civil War is here. Well, let me take that a step further. Let's talk about some of the polls that have come out, because I think this talks to the point in some ways. Both in Reuters and The Hill, there were stories put out about this election, and so it may have risen to 45%, but it's 9 points surging against Trump and for impeachment. But the country's really divided on this. I mean, the numbers against it, there are 41, depending on which poll you look at, 41, 43, 45. And in some polls, like Rasmussen, it's up to 51% of the people who are opposed to the impeachment process and impeaching Trump. And then when you have Trump in his Oval Office saying things like this.
As you know, and you probably now have figured it out, the statement I made to the president of Ukraine, a good man, a nice man, knew was perfect. It was perfect. But the whistleblower reported a totally different statement, like the statement, it was not even made. I guess statement you could say with call. I made a call. The call was perfect.
And so you have Trump saying things like that. And so this is, so talk a bit about your understanding, or your sense, your theory, about how really divisive this is when you talk about we're in a civil war. How dangerous do you think it is?
I think it's a very dangerous period because basically what you have is a president who's, by evidence, seems to have committed some serious crimes, and he's willing to, incite his followers to attack people. He's not only said, we'll find out who the whistleblower is. He actually, said, well, there's treason going on, and I wish we had the old solution to treason, which is execution, right?
Right.
This is very scary. I mean, that in itself. And basically what Trump is saying and what the Republicans around him are saying in his cabinet, what they're saying is that they will not abide by the Constitution. They will not be held accountable by Congress. And we see that with like Pompeo telling State Department employees not to take deposition, right? So
Right.
it's really going to come. I mean, there's sort of like larger theatrics, which are very scary and which I think could incite real violence. And then there's also the constitutional issue, like what happens if Congress tries to subpoena people and they don't come? What happens if the president refuses to abide by Congress? And the Democrats, and I hope they do this. I hope they have the internal fortitude, the steel to do this. They have to steel themselves up, and they have to use the powers that they have and go to the courts and threaten people with jail time, and if necessary, jail people. So this is where we've come to.
So you're actually saying the Democrats, if they're serious about the impeachment, they have to almost they have to stand up as if in a war, like really push this hard and be fierce about it, right? They have to push this hard,
yeah. I mean, I wouldn't use war metaphor because it's not like they're doing anything illegal. They have to actually use all the power that they have. Congress actually has a lot of constitutional power, and they have to actually. But it's a very tough message to actually send people to jail for failing to abide by congressional subpoenas. But that has happened in the past. And it happened, during Watergate, and I think it's something that, needs to be done.
Well, if you look at, let's take a look at this little piece here, because part of it is, as I said in the opening, about muddying the waters. And in some senses, that Trump and his minions only have to muddy the waters. And here you have the House Minority Whip, Stephen Scalise, and I think this was on Fox, if I have that correct, that this is what he had to say, and let's kind of wrestle a bit with this.
Speaker Pelosi jumped the gun 2 years ago. I mean, she's been, and many of her members have been calling for impeachment. She's been enabling that. And in fact, it was a tweet from AOC over the weekend that was really kind of threatening and saying that the Democrats are the ones who are committing a scandal by not impeaching the president. And lo and behold, 2 days later, she calls for impeaching the president. And when pressed to say, name a single high crime or misdemeanor, the majority leader at the time couldn't even list one.
So, how do you? So when you play this game in the press and get people revved up about what they're saying, even if it's not true, like whether it's about what he said or what they said about.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think that statement is part of the sort of Trump strategy, which is that he's constantly highlighted people of color as his opposition. He just recently, there was just a tweet, that from his communication director that mentioned Cory Booker and Maxine Waters and Chuck Schumer, a black man, a black woman, and a Jewish guy. So I think we kind of know what's going on there. And that also speaks to this issue of civil war. I mean, the larger issue is, yes, the congressional left has been on the forefront of this for the very good reason that they represent the constituencies that have been most hurt by Trump and have felt from the beginning that there was a lot of serious offenses. And one could mention, the Ukraine business is the latest thing, but there's been a lot of things that Congress could and should have gone after Trump for from day one. There's the emoluments, the whole issue of that he's been enriching himself as president. There's the sort of threats that he's put on Twitter and against his political opponents, calls to jail his political opponents. All of that has been abuse of power, which Congress has let slide. So let's not say, Pelosi was pushed to impeachment. The real question is, why did it take Pelosi so long?
Well, I mean, so let's wrestle with that for a moment. And when you look at what's happening now with Pelosi and this impeachment, you've written about this, as a matter of fact. I mean, this is, people look at this as, and the right wing looks at this as, the deep state going after Trump. And in some senses, it is about people who are concerned about traditional establishment security that are in the process of saying Trump is dangerous to us and to our order. Then you have progressives.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that is what, I mean, you've had a majority within the Democratic Party for a long time that's wanted impeachment. But what finally turned the corner was that in this case, Trump is going after the intelligence community. The whistleblower is a CIA officer, right? And so that has convinced moderate Democrats like Pelosi and like some Democrats that are in traditionally Republican districts that to go after this. And what they're actually doing now is they're trying to seize control of the narrative. It's a traditional political ploy. Like you see a parade and you go to the front of it and say, "I'm leading the parade." And so CNN did this thing over the weekend where they had 4 congresswomen and said, "These are the leaders of impeachment," and they were all 4 white women. And the fact is that it has not been, 4 white, moderate Democratic women that have been pushing for impeachment all along. It's been the squad. But I sort of call this stolen valor.
And it made me think one of the tweets of this, I think it's called "Play the Trump Card" tweet, where they had a picture of the revolutionary soldiers as a response to what's happening to Trump. And I mean, that's a serious call to arms in this, right? And so
no, I think you're going to see a polarized country. And what you're seeing in the polls is Trump is losing some Republicans, but he's also some of them who has had doubts about him. But some of the more, but there's other Republicans who are kind of like soft Trump supporters that are very partisan Republicans, and they're moving towards him. And so you're going to see a very impeachment is a divisive issue. Politics is divisive.
Right.
It involves arguments, and you're going to have a lot of very bitter arguments coming out of this.
So if you look at this, as we close here, I was thinking about it, even in the magazine that you work with and write for, The Nation, there's an argument going on about whether the impeachment would make any sense or not. So how do you respond to those who say there is no there enough to make this work in the House? It's only going to die in the Senate anyway. They're not going to find 20 Republicans to complete the trial, to finish the trial and say, yes, Trump, you're guilty. And that this is a failed tactic. And also it's like Russiagate, Ukrainegate, it's all a waste of time.
Well, there's a couple of things. One is that already the White House is kind of falling apart over this. Like, you've had a lot of recrimination and a lot of leaks. So I feel like for that reason alone, impeachment is kind of worth it. But if Trump is a dangerous guy who's doing bad things, so the more pressure you put on him, the better. But I mean, even beyond that, I think there's already enough votes in the House for impeachment. They can impeach him tomorrow if they wanted to. And then the question is whether it's a 2-part process: impeachment and removal. You can impeach him, then will it go to the Senate, and will the Senate vote to remove? And I don't think right now it doesn't look like it.
Right.
There's some reporting that there's some Republicans are having doubts, but still, even if you don't remove, what you're going to have is these Republicans will have to be on the record saying that they think that everything Trump has done is acceptable. They think that using the office of the presidency to go after political opponents, which is what the Ukraine business is all about, and not just in Ukraine, but in Australia, in many other countries, the Republican Party is going to have to sign on for some of the worst things that Trump has done. So I think that's good. I think that's good for the Democrats. I think it's good for politics. Let them own this.
And we'll see how these hearings roll out and what is divulged in these hearings, and look how they're going to muddy the waters. We'll come back and wrestle with this some more over the next several months. Jeet, you and I are not going anywhere. We're going to be doing this for a bit, I think.
That's right. We will, yes.
Jeet, here, it's always a pleasure to have you with us. You can go back and take care of your kids now for a while.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's always great to talk to you.
Great being here, yeah.
Take care. And I'm Mark Steiner here for the Real News Network. You know, the impeachment's at the top of our list and your list. We have to watch this, see where it takes us. We may have joked at the end, but it is not a laughing matter. And I'm Mark Steiner here for the Real News Network. Thank you for joining us. Take care.
Students at Brazil's Santa Catarina Federal University are on strike. 70% of classes have been canceled. It's been ongoing for 2 weeks. They made the decision to strike on September 10th in a huge assembly attended by thousands of students. The students are striking against a massive 30% cut to the university budget and the rollout of a government restructuring plan called Futurice, which they say is an attempt to privatize the university system. The Santa Catarina Federal University is one of the top 20 schools in Latin America. This is the first university student body in Brazil to declare an ongoing strike against the Bolsonaro government. They're hoping other universities will join them.
The universities will not make it to the end of the year with the budget slashed. And there's a possibility they won't make it halfway through the next year with the proposed budget. So because of the urgency, we decided to organize and propose this strike as an historic tool to stand up to what is being imposed upon us.
Teachers spoke out in support of the striking students last week during a university-wide teacher assembly. Some particularly railed against the recent elimination of thousands of scholarships and research grants by Education Minister Abraham Weintraub.
We can't let a government that is burning the Amazon, burning our mountains, and burning our dreams contaminate the dreams of our students. What Minister Weintraub is doing with the Brazilian postgraduate students is terrorism. You don't do that. It ends the dreams of students who are just a year from finishing their masters, and they don't know if they'll be able to continue or not because they don't know if there will be PhD programs in this country. If there is no science, there is not country, and there is no sovereignty. We have to stand up now.
The teachers, however, voted against joining the students. Most classes, nevertheless, are canceled. The students may be on strike, but they're not staying home. Ongoing activities, events, and meetings are being held to organize and hash out next steps.
Nós temos uma gama diversa de mentes de diversas áreas do saber e que poucos se comunicam num dia a dia.
We have a diverse range of minds from different areas who don't usually communicate. So the strike is a moment these people who are worried about education are coming together. They're meeting and organizing in various working groups: art, internal communication, foreign relations, legal.
De arte, de comunicação interna, de articulação externa.
Across campus, several days a week, pharmacy students visit with patients waiting to be seen at the university hospital. Some of their companions have already lost scholarships from the budget cuts.
That's why we're here, because you deserve to hear about what's happening from us, the students. We are on strike, but that doesn't mean we're staying home. We want to study, but we want to be sure we can continue the semester or have the funds for next year, which is why we are on strike and speaking with the community.
The funding cuts are already taking their toll. The university's subsidized school cafeteria is set to be closed. This will hit poor students hard, as the highly inexpensive meal costs less than half a US dollar, and it's something they often can't do without. Students are also afraid that if Bolsonaro's Futuro-se program is imposed, the university may start charging for its medical services.
All of the beds right now at the hospital are public, and no one pays. But if this project is put into effect, many of the spots could go to private insurance plans. In other words, people will have to pay for medical care at the public hospital.
Under Futuro-se, federal universities must acquire partial funding from private businesses and entities. The program was announced in July. In an overflowing school-wide university council meeting earlier this year, the university overwhelmingly opposed the plan. University professors and deans have expressed major concerns because they weren't consulted, and because it could put university administration in the hands of private entities, investors, and businesses. They say it could impact how teachers are hired, the classes that are offered, and the direction of the university itself.
Não dá para ignorar que esse é o projeto que está em curso com relação a uma das principais.
You can't ignore the fact that this project is being rolled out against one of the main fronts of resistance that any authoritarian government has to confront. We lived through the experience of the federal universities during the military dictatorship. The main resistance against the regime was created through the federal universities.
Era o espaço em que você ainda conseguia, de alguma forma, criar uma resistência, né?
For many of those here, Futurice is really a political tool to gut funding for humanities departments, sociology, and philosophy, which Bolsonaro has long accused of being hotbeds of Marxist teachings. With a greater dependence on private funding, Bolsonaro could ensure that investors put their money where they think it's a good bet: business, engineering, maybe medicine.
A gente acredita que mobilize a sociedade em torno desse grande risco que é.
We need to organize society against this great risk, which means handing over its greatest ability to create a sovereign future, and that is with the public and autonomous universities. A university that can manage its resources and define where it's going to invest its money, in what research and specialization, and define its curriculum. And all of this, which is the foundation of the public and autonomous university, is at risk with the creation of this project FutureSay.
Students have vowed not to back down. The strike will continue, and they're expected to join more national rallies in early October.
Os estudantes vão votar você na linha.